Hi everyone, my name is Yamini Ravindran and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this panel discussion for the National Youth Dialogue themed Religious and Cultural Integration for Sustainable Development. So it is a joy to see all of you here and we are excited to commence this discussion. So just some introductory comments before I introduce our panelists and kickstart our discussion, right? Yes. So Sri Lanka is a home to diverse religions, cultures, and ethnicities. As we all know, religious values and practices are deeply entrenched in the social fabric of our country. However, at the same time, we also know that tensions and deep-rooted divisions based on religious identity and ethnicity have posed some of the biggest challenges to Sri Lankan society, both historically and based on our present experience, we know that such tensions and divisions have only polarized communities and caused social conflict, right? And this has come at a severe cost for us. And that is at the collective well being of our nation. Today, 10 years following the end of the Civil War, uh, religious communities are facing new challenges. For instance, post-war, there has been a surge in right violations reported against Muslim communities, Christian, Hindu communities, riots in Alutgama, Digana, the Easter attacks, and post-Easter violence in 2019 are some examples that come to our mind here. Parallelly, in the recent past, we have also seen a rise in online hate against minority faith communities, which has further intensified tensions in our country. So this is a context in which we are about to have our discussion today. So this begs the question, what's the relationship between religion and sustainable development? But before that, I think it's important for us to understand what is sustainable development, right? So sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sustainable development is about the bigger picture. It is about improving the lives of everyone, everywhere, irrespective of their race, religion, ethnicity, gender, or culture. So, how do we go forward as a nation? How can we improve coexistence among communities? How can we root out racial and religious hatred so that we are better placed to experience sustainable development, right? And what is also the role of youth in this, all of this important work? Because after all, youth and you are play a very integral role and you are the future generation. So what is your role in religion, in culture, in coexistence, and in connection to sustainable development as well. Right. So on that note, I want to introduce you all to our panelists. On our panel today, we have 4 experts who have worked extensively in the areas of development, peace building, engaging youth for religious and social harmony. And they are going to share some of their insights into these areas. So it is my joy to introduce Dr. Vinya Aryaratna, the president of the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement, Mr. Saman Senaviratna, a project manager at the National Peace Council of Sri Lanka, Mr. Suchit Abevikrama, co-founder Interfaith Colombo, Ms. Rimaza Hazan, an educator and a youth peace security trainer in peace and conflict resolution. So first and foremost, thank you all for joining us for this panel discussion. I'm looking forward to it. And in fact, I'm sure everyone who joined today are looking forward to your thoughts, your insights, and your ideas on how religion and culture can play a role in sustainable development. So on that note, before we go into our panel discussion and into a rich discussion on this discourse, we thought it's important to have a quick poll to check your pulse and to also be able to have you engage with us from the very beginning, right? So if I may ask UNDP to share the first question on how religion and culture can usher in peace and harmony in a society. So do you guys agree or disagree? Just very quickly. Oh, thank you. Actually, they have shared all 4 questions together. That's brilliant. So if you all can just quickly answer the questions. Religion and culture can usher in harmony and peace in society. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Religious and cultural diversity can positively impact sustainable development. Do you agree? Do you disagree? As a country, religious and cultural diversity has been our strength. So, do you agree? Do you disagree? And religion and culture have helped in improving gender equality and inclusion in Sri Lanka. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'll just give a minute for that so that all of you can quickly vote. Okay, so if people have responded, can we see the results? Okay, that's great. So when it comes to an panelist as well, you will find this interesting. When it comes to the first question, religion and culture can usher in harmony and peace in a society. 91% of them have agreed and only 1% of them have disagreed. So 91% of the audience here, the participants, they believe that religion and culture can actually usher in harmony and peace in society. For the second question, religious and cultural diversity can positively impact sustainable development. 82% have agreed. So they believe that there is a positive impact coming from religion and culture towards an impact towards sustainable development, and only 18 have disagreed. As a country, religious and cultural diversity has been our strength. 91% of them have agreed to this. So they believe it is our strength. And only 9% have disagreed. And the fourth and last question, religion and culture have helped in improving gender equality and inclusion in Sri Lanka. 55% have agreed and 45% have disagreed. So that is something interesting for you, Rimaza, as well, as we go into conversation on how we can take that forward. But in a majority sense, all of them positively have agreed, a majority of them, that religion and culture does have a positive impact. It is our strength as a nation, and it has an impact to improve and positively impact sustainable development. So thank you to everyone who answered the poll. It helps us to also understand how you think and your mindset, and at the same time be able to engage with you. So without causing further delays, I'll pose the first question to Dr. Vinaya. The first question, Dr. Vinaya Aryaratna, is culture, religious and cultural and ethnic identity has often been at the center of social conflict and tension in Sri Lanka. So in that sense, how can religion and culture help with bringing communities together and mobilizing them towards the common goal of achieving sustainable development? So in particular, the question is, how can religious and cultural diversity contribute towards sustainable development? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Yamini, and thank you for inviting me for this UNDP Youth Dialogue. I have well past my youthhood, but I'm young at heart and very happy to engage in this youth dialogue. At the outset, regarding your question, I don't quite agree with the statement that religious, cultural, and ethnic identity has often been at the center of social conflict and tension in Sri Lanka. There are many countries in the world where such diversity exists, but there is no conflict or there's minimal conflict and tensions. Why is it so? Actually, the diversity in cultural identity is really not the primary cause of conflict. It is how you see those differences, and then how sometimes external forces external to the cultural identities, ethnic or religious identities, exploit these differences to gain narrow political or economic gains. Now, Sri Lanka itself has a long history of communal harmony, ethnic harmony, and also we see, despite we can cite examples of conflict or violence, there are also enough examples of coexistence as well. So how do you reconcile then? So for me, I think it's how a society approaches these diversities and then manage them primarily. And for that to happen, of course, we need quite a bit of work to be done as citizens, but also structurally there needs to be some changes in relation to governance and other things, which of course we'll be discussing later. Now, if you look at the poll, it's very interesting. We don't see that cultural differences, ethnic or religious differences are bringing conflict. They say that it's an asset. It's a positive factor, and we aspire. That's why 91% say that religion and culture can usher in harmony and peace in a society. 91% believes that's our aspiration. But when you look at the answers to the fourth question, religion and culture has helped in improving gender equality and inclusion in Sri Lanka, it's just half of it, right? So how do you explain the gap? We aspire for something, but we can't achieve that. So here, to answer your question then, firstly, we need to get the individuals and communities to relate to their true religious teachings. It's kind of an intra-religious reflection is required, where we connect the religious teachings into the practice in daily life. And also, secondly, we need to also understand the culture that is not yours, or the religion that's not yours. So in Sri Lanka, we from childhood we learn about our own religion and practice our own religion, but we really do not, we have very little understanding of the other religion. So I think we have to work together to understand the fundamental teachings of each religion, no matter which religion to which you belong to or ethnicity. For that, you need to create opportunities for interaction, and that is also culturally there. I mean, some of the sustainable development concepts are already ingrained in these religious teachings. So if we can promote those and promote interaction, particularly among children and youth, we can see these bridges being built, and then we can truly see this diversity as a strength in building peace and harmony in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinaya, and thank you so much for your insightful thoughts on looking inward into your own religious beliefs and to be able to build that trust, and how diversity is our strength. So on that note, I will go to Saman Senaviratna. And the question is, how can religious and cultural leaders help in resolving some of the key challenges to sustainable development in Sri Lanka? Over to you, Saman. Saman, you're on mute. Please unmute yourself. Great.
Yeah. විශේෂයෙන්ම ශ්‍රී ලංකාව ගත්තාම දකුණු ආසියාවේ විවිධත්වය සහිත රටක්. ලංකාවේ ඉතිහාසය අධ්‍යයනය කරනකොටත් අපට පේනවා ලංකාවේ ජාතික අරගලයේදී සිංහල දෙමළ මුස්ලිම් කියන ජන කණ්ඩායම් තුනම බ්‍රිතාන්‍යයන්ට එරෙහිව ක්‍රියා කරලා තිබෙනවා රටේ නිදහස ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා. ඒකම අපි දකිනවා ලංකා ජාතික සංගමය බිහි කරන අවස්ථාවේදීත් සිංහල දෙමළ මුස්ලිම් කියන ජාතික වේදයකින් තොරව ඒගොල්ලෝ තම තමන්ගේ රට වෙනුවෙන් ඒ තනතුරු පත් කරගෙන ඒ අවශ්‍යතාවයන් වලට අනුබ්‍රිතාන්‍යයන් සමග සාකච්ඡාවලට ගෙන් තියෙනවා නිදහස් ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා විවිධ අරගල කරලා තිබෙනවා. මේක තමයි අපේ රටේ තිබෙන නිදහස මේ ඉතිහාසය. 1948න් පස්සේ අපේ රට නිදහස් වුණාන් පස්සේ යම්කිසි ආකාරයක මේ ජනවර්ග තුනේ බෙදීමක් අපට දක්නට ලැබෙනවා. ඉතින් මේ බෙදීම මම හිතන්නේ මගේ අදහස පුද්ගලික අදහස වෙන්නේ දේශපාලනය විසින් මේ බෙදීමට යම් යම් සහයෝගයන් දක්වුවා කියන අදහස. නමුත් අපිට මේ මොහොතේදී මේක අභියෝගයක් අපේ රටේ. ඒ අභියෝගය අපි ජයගන්නේ කොහොමද? විශේෂයෙන්ම ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ සංස්කෘතිය ගැන වැඩිපුර ඇල්මක් තිබෙන ජනතාවක් ජීවත් වෙන රටක්. බටහිර රටවල් දිහා බලනකොට ඊට වඩා වෙනස් ස්වභාවයක් තමයි ආසියාතික රටවල් වල තිබෙන්නේ. ඉතින් අපිට බෞද්ධ සංස්කෘතියක් තිබෙනවා, අපිට හින්දු සංස්කෘතියක් තියෙනවා, එක්කම අපිට ක්‍රිස්තියානි කතෝලික සංස්කෘතියක් තියෙනවා, ඉස්ලාමික සංස්කෘතියක් තිබෙනවා. මේකට හැම ඒ ජනවර්ගවල ඉන්න හැම කෙනෙක්ම ආදරය කරනවා, ඒක අනුගමනය කරනවා. ඉතින් අපිට පුළුවන් වෙනවා ආගමික නායකයන් කොහොමද මේ කාරණාවදී මේ ගැටුම් ඇති වෙන අවස්ථාවේදී ඒවා විසඳා ගන්න මේ ඔවුන්ගේ සහයෝගය ලබා ගන්න. මට එක උදාහරණයක් ඔබට කියන්න පුළුවන්. විශේෂයෙන් මේ 2018 මාර්තු මාසයේ මහනුවර දිගන ප්‍රදේශයේ ඇති වෙච්ච ගැටුම. මේ ගැටුමේදී ප්‍රධාන කණ්ඩායම් දෙකක් අපට මේ පෙනෙන්න තිබුණා. එකක් තමයි ඉස්ලාම් ආගම නියෝජනය කරන කණ්ඩායමක්. අනිත් එක බෞද්ධ ආගම නියෝජනය කරන කණ්ඩායමක්. මේ ගැටුම හරිම පුංචි. නමුත් අන්තිමට වුණු අයහපත් ප්‍රතිඵලය ඉතාමත් විශාලයි. විශේෂයෙන්ම අපිට තියෙන පුද්ගලික අවබෝධය ජාතික සාමාන්‍යයට තියෙන එක්ස්පීරියන්ස් එක තමයි අපි ලංකාවේ දිස්ත්‍රික් 17ක දිස්ත්‍රික් අන්තරාගමික කමිටු පිහිටවලා තියෙනවා. ඒතර මහනුවර දිස්ත්‍රික් අන්තරාගමික කමිටුව මේ සඳහා මැදිහත් වුණ ආගමික නායකයන්ගේ සහයෝගය ඇතිව ඒකම ඒගොල්ලෝ සිවිල් කමිෂන් එකක් මේකේ තියෙන තොරතුරු සොයන්න කමිෂන් එකක් පත් කරා. ඒක අන්অෆිෂියල් සිවිල් කමිෂන් එකක්. ඒතර ඒකෙදී වින්දිතයන් කරා ගියා. වින්දිතයන් හමු වුණා. ඒකම ගැටුම් වලට සම්බන්ධ වෙච්ච පාර්ශ්වයන් හමු වුණා. ඒ පාර්ශ්වයන් හමු වෙලා ඔවුන් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරා. යම් කිසි ආකාරයක ගැටුම වර්ධනය වෙන්න තිබුණු අවකාශය යම් කිසි මට්ටමක පාලනය කරන්න මේ කණ්ඩායම් වලට පුළුවන් වුණා. මම හිතන්නේ මේකට ජාතික සාමල්ලේ පමණක් නෙවෙයි සර්වෝදය විවිධ සංවිධාන මේ මහත් වූ කාර්යයට සම්බන්ධ වුණා. ඉතින් මේකෙන් පෙනී යන්නේ ආගමික නායකයන්ගේ මැදිහත් වීම තුළින් අපිට එන අභියෝග පාලනය කරගන්න පුළුවන් කියන කාරණාව තමයි මට මතු කරන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ. තව මට එක උදාහරණයක් ඔබට කියන්න පුළුවන්. මෑතක මේකට සමාන්තරව සිද්ධ වුණු මහනුවර පාසලක් මට පාසල මට එච්චර මතක නැහැ. මේ පාසලේ ගුරුවරියන් දෙදෙනෙක් කර මුහුණු ආවරණය කරගෙන එන ඇඳුම හිජාබ්. ඒ ඇඳුම ඇඳගෙන පාසලේ සේවය කරන්න පැමිණෙනකොට ශිෂ්‍යයන් සහ දෙමාපියන් මේකට විරුද්ධ වුණා. ඉතින් මහනුවර දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ දිස්ත්‍රික් අන්තරාගමික කමිටුවයි මේකට මැදිහත් වෙලා ඒවකට හිටපු ආණ්ඩුකාරවරයා මුණ ගැසුණා. එක්කම පොලිසිය ඒ අදාළ නිලධාරීන් හමු වුණා. අමුලා සාකච්ඡා කරා. නමුත් ඒ බොහොම තදින් මේ මුස්ලිම් සංස්කෘතික ඇඳුම් වලට විරුද්ධව යම්කිසි පෙළගැසීමක් සිංහල සමාජයේ තිබුණ මහනුවර. මේ කාරණාවටත් මේ කණ්ඩායම මැදිහත් වුණා. එක්කම මානව හිමිකම් කමිෂන් එකට සුප්‍රීම කෝට් එකට කේස් එකක් ෆයිල් කරන්නත් කටයුතු කරා. ඉතින් මේකින් ඒකම මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ යම්කිසි ආකාරයක සාකච්ඡාමය ආකාරයකින් විසඳා ගන්නට පුළුවන් පරිසරයකට සිද්ධ පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. ඒ වගේම සිදුවීමක් තිබෙනවා යාපනයේ යුද්ධය අවසන් වුණයින් පස්සේ හමුදා පාවිච්චි කරපු භූමි ක්‍රමානුකූලව ඒගොල්ලෝ ඒවා ඉවත් වුණා. ඒ ඉවත් වෙනකොට එක හමුදා කඳුරක් ස්ථාපනය කරපු ප්‍රදේශයක තිබුණා බුද්ධ ප්‍රතිමාවක් ස්ථාපනය කරලා. නමුත් ඒ ඉඩම පෞද්ගලික ඉඩම්. ඉතින් මේ බුද්ධ ප්‍රතිමාව ඉවත් කිරීමේදී ප්‍රශ්න මතුවුණා. එකක් තමයි බුදු පිළිමයක් අයින් කරනවා කියලා කියන්නේ මේක ජාතික ප්‍රශ්නයක් බවට පත් වෙනවා. ඉතින් එතනදී යාපනයේ දිස්ත්‍රික් අන්තරාගමික කමිටුවේ ආගමික නායකයන් මැදිහත් වුණා. මැදිහත් වෙලා ඒ අයගේ සහයෝගය ඇතිව මේක විශාල ප්‍රචාරණයක් ලබා නොදෙන ආකාරයට මේ බුද්ධ ප්‍රතිමාව අයින් කරා. ඒකදී හමුදාවත් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කරා, පොලිසියත් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කරා, ආගමික මේ කියන්නේ ආගමික පාර්ශවයන් එක්ක උදාහරණයක් ඇටියට මල්ලතු පාර්ශවය, අස්ගිරිය පාර්ශවය වගේ මේ ඒවත් එක්ක සාකච්ඡා කළා මේ බුදු පිළිමය අයින් කරන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. තව කාරණාවක් තියෙනවා මට පුත්තල මේ ඔබට කියන්නේ එක උදාහරණයක්. මම මේ සාක්ෂි ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ මේ අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක, මේ අභියෝග අපිට ජය ගන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක පෙන්වන්න. පුත්තල මේ තිබුණා හින්දු අය විසින් පාවිච්චි කරන එක්තරා ස්ථානයක්. ඒක පුත්තලම කොළඹ මාර්ගයේ තමයි පිහිටලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ ස්ථානයේ ආධාර ලැබෙන ආධාර පින් පෙට්ටිය කියලා කියන්නේ ආධාර ඒ පෙට්ටියක් සවි කරලා තිබුණා. මේ ස්ථානය බෞද්ධ කණ්ඩායමක් විසින් අත්පත් කරගත්තා. විශේෂයෙන්ම ත්‍රිවීල් කණ්ඩායමක්. ඒ කණ්ඩායම අත්පත් කරගෙන යාබද විහාරස්ථානයක් විසින් මේක පවත්වාගෙන ගියා. අතර මේක හින්දු අයට අයිති ස්ථානයක්. ඉතින් මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ දිගින් දිගටම තිබුණා. ඊට පස්සේ මේක ඉදිරිපත් කළා මේ පුත්තලම දිස්ත්‍රික් අන්තරාගමික කමිටුවට. උන් සාකච්ඡා කරා දිසාපතිවරයා එක්ක පොලිසිය එක්ක. මේක දීර්ඝ සාකච්ඡාවක්. මේක එක දවසින් මේ විසඳුනේ නෑ මේ ප්‍රශ්නය. ඒ සාකච්ඡාවෙන් පස්සේ අවසන් කරන්න මේ ස්ථානය ඒ බෞද්ධ විහාරස්ථානයෙන් අයින් කරලා ඒ හින්දු කණ්ඩායමට බාර දෙන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. ඉතින් මම මේ කිව්ව කාරණා ටික ඔබට කිව්වේ මේ ප්‍රශ්න අපිට විසඳන්න පුළුවන් ආගමික නායකයන්ගේ මැදිහත් වීම එක්ක. මේ ප්‍රශ්න අපි බලහත්කාරයෙන් විසඳන්න යනවා නම් සමාජයට අසාර්ථක වෙනවා. ඒක අපේ සම්වර්ධනයට බලපානවා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි.
Thank you, Mr. Saman. I'll quickly go to Mr. Sujit Abevikrama. So the next question is to you, Sujit. In your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges that youth face when it comes to interreligious or intercultural dialogue in Sri Lanka?
Thank you, Yamini, and thank you for everybody joining today. Young people, we say, are agents of change. They are demanding for change in society, and that's something that we always can credit young people for. It's a pleasure to see that they see religion and culture as a force for positive change. But I think that has to be taken with the understanding that that won't happen by itself. It won't happen unless we do something about it. And in the realm of religion and culture, we need to really start to look at religion and culture as not something static. It's something that's evolving. Our religions are evolving. Our cultures are evolving. Young people have a crucial part to play in these transformations. I think that's a big challenge for young people because these spaces are claimed by older leadership most of the time. And then to contribute to the transformation is not always easy in that hierarchical leadership structures and spaces. So I think one of those challenges is to claim that space. I know there is a tendency in some young people to walk away from religion and culture because they see this as a challenge and they try to walk away from it. But I think the transformations come is when you start to engage, when there is problems, walk towards them and try to change them, address them rather than ignoring them. I think this is one approach I like to highlight. As I said, religion and culture are not static. We need to be part of the conversation. We need to bring new perspective to these dialogues within our religions, within our cultures, across our religions, so that we can contribute to that transformation. Getting over that hurdle of a static religion, we've been taught about a static religion. We've been taught about a static culture. This is the one to be proud of. But it is within those things that we are proud of that there is violence. Our cultures also carry violence. Our religious communities also carry violence. I think we need to acknowledge that, open up to this. If we continue to just to see the positive and not be critical about it, transformations cannot happen. I think that's one basis for the challenges and how to overcome them. A second I want to highlight is the inclusion. Generally, religious places tend to be very less inclusive. If you walk into a place of worship, it's targeting that community and not really welcoming of the other. If somebody different walks in, it's not really a place that they will be welcomed in. Everybody will kind of look at you awkwardly. Why are you walking to my religious place? I think this doesn't need to be like that. Our work with Interfaith Colombo, we try to get young people of different religions to walk into each other's places of worship. When we go into the Sunday mass or as a community of diverse young people, we are challenging different communities. When we go into the temple with young people of different religions and religious attire, etc., we are challenging that culture. I think we need to be part of that, not by excluding ourselves, but by including ourselves and including others into this. And some of the challenges I also see is that the gender issues where the religious spaces tend to also be overly male dominated. And sometimes this discriminate, even when it comes to the dress code to whatnot, it's always the discrimination is more biased towards women. I think that these things we need to openly talk about and address, as well as young people. We need to create a new dynamic to how these are handled. We also need to open up to critical conversations. I think if you really want to engage in interfaith dialogue, it's not about talking about the positivities. It's about not about just, yes, we are good united, but it's also talking about the human rights abuses. It's also talking about the displaced people. It's talking about those who disappeared and those who are waiting to know where their loved ones are, the attacks against places of worship. It's also about the attacks on the majority communities or the discrimination felt by the majority community. Sometimes our work on peace building tends to focus exclusively on the minority issues, but then forgets the majority grievances, which can tend to drive a lot of the dynamics. And if we really want to transform some of this, I think as young people, we need to also get over that framing that we are given. It's peace building is about minorities only. It's about all of us. It's about an inclusive approach and engaging in an inclusive approach. These are some challenges I see, and maybe some aspects how we can respond to them. Yeah.
Thank you, Sujit. And it'll be interesting to talk to all of you further on this, but I'll quickly go to Rimasa Hassan. Rimasa, your question is, in Sri Lanka, religion and culture are deeply embedded in our social fabric. So what are some of the challenges posed by religion and culture when it comes to gender equality and inclusion as well?
So much, Yamini and the team, for inviting and giving this opportunity. Yeah, as you say that when we see the Sri Lankan context, I think Sujit even earlier mentioned many things. That we know that Sri Lanka is a multicultural country, and always from birth to death, our religion and culture is tied to people. That means we are following this culture and religion from birth to death. All the things that we do, that means it affects everything. So I cannot say that we cannot go away from it, but there are some things we could. That means, for example, we don't know that if we go on to the history, that means man's, this was started as hunter-gatherer. So from that time period, even the man was more powerful, so he is going on hunting, and the female's duty was to raise and look after the kids and gathering. And looking after the house. So from that concept onward, from that day onwards, in the society, that means they have thought that the female should be like this. We don't know, even when we were children, we don't know, without any logical reasoning, even our parents or some others would say, a girl should be like this. Why are you laughing? Don't laugh. Don't speak loud. So these are the things they have brought out. And even when we are kids, we are always given a doll, and always some colors are for pink for girls and blue for boys, something like that. They have, even now I see some people selecting gifts for a girl. Okay, if there's something, a cooking set, it's for a girl, and a bat or a gun is for a boy. So I don't know why. These are the things that even from the childhood, it is promoted. So these kind of things goes on, and finally, when you are married or when you are in a family, you scold, that you blame the male, that you don't know to look after the child. Why when the child is crying, oh, my man doesn't know to do this. So why are we blaming? So I think this is the thing, that it is brought out from the childhood. So, and finally we are blaming, we have never given an opportunity for a man to do those things, to look after that. So if we have given that, I think it would be fine. And also, without giving that, in the when he is 27 or 28, we are asking why he cannot do that. So, and I have seen some children, there are talking, when someone one is very sad and a boy is going to cry, he don't cry like a girl. So these kind of steps, I don't know, if we could change these things. These are very big challenges. So then a man or boy, I have seen some students when I teach, they feel that they are uncomfortable, they couldn't express their expressions. So they feel that I will be that means humiliated, or I will be that means people will look down upon me if I be open, if I cry. So because of that, sometimes it makes other issues even. And also I want to talk about this, so that is another thing. And because of these things, some education opportunities are not given to the children. Even in some cultures, they say, I think, you know, that when we talk about the MMD, so here that the Muslim marriage and divorce system, and earlier it was mentioned that a child who is about 12 years grown up could marry. So I think these kind, now I hope it's changing. And so at the age of 12, when you are grown up, I don't know, with the, that means a child at the age of 12 is not able to be a woman. That means could be a woman, but they don't know how to take their challenges because they need to go on their education, continue their education. And also I have seen in some job opportunities, when they go on, they say, okay, a male cannot do this, a male can do this job, but a female cannot. So there are restrictions. So that means when we take our culture and religion, they make restrictions. And when we look at the plantation community, we can see the same job done by male and female. Sometimes they pay more to the male, even if it is similar to the female. She works for a long time with many difficulties. So here I don't know what is the reason behind that. And also, I don't know how far this is truth, but I heard recently in Kandy, when we are electing the Devardhana Nilame, that if there is a female who is eligible in that position, but she is not eligible to vote, cast a vote in selecting that to that post. And I don't know, in Buddhism, even the many females who were pioneer to bring out that means to the religion, how they have worked, and they have done these things. And in some religious places, female are prohibited to go in. So these are many issues that we need to focus on. And
Thank you.
we need, yeah, okay, I could, thank you.
Thank you, Rimasa. So I will just, we will go in for our second round of questions, and then definitely gender, and when it comes to religion and culture, is such an important topic, and can't be concised in 4 minutes. I completely understand that. Let's discuss further, and so that we have more time for the discussion period, I'll just quickly jump into a second round of questions. So in the second round of questions, we'll be asking our panelists a question each as well, and then afterwards we'll go into a time of discussion. So the first question in the second round is once again to Dr. Vinya Aryaratne. So the question is this: when it comes to the new agendas of sustainable development goals, they recognize the need to provide equal access to justice based on human rights, effective rule of law, good governance, in order to build peaceful and inclusive societies. So these are the things that SDGs recognize. In light of some of the religious and cultural conflicts and tensions that have occurred in our country, what role do human rights or rule of law and good governance play when it comes to improving social harmony in Sri Lanka? Over to you, Dr. Vinya.
Yeah, thank you, Yamini. I think if you look at the SDG agenda, of course, even beyond, I think providing equal access to justice based on human rights is fundamental to the existence of a society. All citizens must enjoy those rights, and also good governance promote social harmony. I don't think there's any question about it. Now, when you look at the whole concept of human rights, rule of law, good governance, I think the challenge that we are facing today is that these concepts are being interpreted as Western concepts, that are being imposed on us. And we are not really looking at how these concepts are ingrained in religious teachings as well. So if you look at human rights, it starts with human dignity. We are born with certain rights, and the human dignity or sanctity of life, right to life, is fundamental, and that's recognized in all religions. So one way to approach this is that always try to remind ourselves that these principles are universal. It's not coming from outside and being imposed on us. And we try to always, when we talk about human rights, it should be coming naturally from our own teachings of our own religions, and also from the practice we have always had, because culturally the respect for other people, respect for others to express their feelings have always been part of our culture. But when this is being challenged, of course there are serious violations and problems, but there was always, before even the rule of law comes into play to redress those violations or grievances, the society itself rejects. Now today the problem is, even if somebody's rights are violated, we always rely on the law to take care of it. Even we ourselves do not sometimes believe that the justice system will be able to address those issues. So I think there needs to be a serious reimagination of how we practice human rights and how we see these things. And the religious and cultural conflicts, of course, have occurred where the rule of law is not there, because if there's a violation, there has to be action taken on that. So if you don't have a governance system which is fair by all, not just by the majority, then of course we are facing a serious challenge in promoting social harmony. So the approach to this is trying to build this understanding at a ground level. When you say good governance, it's not just the rule of law at the top, but how we govern ourselves in small communities, community organizations, as corporates, as our youth organizations. Here the principles of respect for each other, and also the principles of accountability, how we are transparent in our actions to others. I think if these things are reminded at ground level and then brought up, that becomes a big force to demand the same from the government. So I think I would look at the SDG agenda in promoting equal access to justice must come from, there has to be a demand for that, and for that demand to happen, there has to be a lot of conviction and understanding about these principles, and we should of course relate them to our own religious teachings. Then we can put it in that context, so that they will not be seen as alien concept, but things that we ourselves adhere to and then demand from our rulers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay. I think that is, I remember even in the discourse of transitional justice, we actually, from the NCSL, we released a research report in 2015 called The Role of Religion in Transitional Justice, and completely agreeing with you, how each concept of justice, peace, reconciliation, all of these are not Western tools or Western concepts, and we have such a rich culture. It actually comes from each and every one of our own faiths and our own beliefs. And you know, just that we tend to not look at it that way. Thank you so much. So the next question is over to you, Saman. The question is on even in the lot of work that the National Peace Council has done. So the question that we pose to you is, lasting peace and sustainable development depends on the peaceful and inclusive coexistence of groups. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we have seen a lot of polarization and division between communities. So in your experience, what have been some of the most effective ways of promoting coexistence and harmonious relations between communities? And if you can actually stress on, you know, when you talk about the effective ways of bringing together, you know, promoting coexistence and harmonious relations between communities, if youth in particular have played a very key role in that, if you can talk in that angle as well. Over to you, Saman.
බොහොම ස්තුතියි. දැන් ඇත්තටම දැන් අපිට මේ විශේෂයෙන්ම සියලුම ජාතීන් එකට වැඩ කරපු සමාජයක් අපේ රටේ තිබුණා. ඒ සමාජය පසු කාලීනයේ සමාජය අපෙන් ඈත් වුණා. ඒ ඈත් වෙන බොහෝ වෙලාවට විවිධ අන්තවාදී කණ්ඩායම් වල බලපෑම් ඇති වුණා. එක්කම දේශපාලකයන්ගේ බලපෑම් නැතුව නෙවෙයි. ඉතින් කොහොම වුණත් අපිට ජාත්‍යන්තර අත්දැකීම් ගත්තොත් අපි දන්නවා දැන් අපිට යාබද මේ දැවැන්ත රාජ්‍ය ඉන්දියාවේ විශාල මේ ඩයිවර්සිටි එකක් තිබෙනවා. දකුණු ආසියාවේ තිබෙන ලොකුම ඩයිවර්සිටි එක, ලෝකයේ තියෙන ලොකුම ඩයිවර්සිටි එක. කොහොමද ඉන්දියාව ගොඩනගන්නේ මේ විවිධත්වය ඇතුලේ? ඒකම දකුණු අප්‍රිකාව කොහොමද ගොඩනගන්නේ? දකුණු අප්‍රිකාවේ 1948 වෙනකොට තිබුණේ white supremacy. ඒ සුදු ජාතිකයන් තමයි සුපිරි ජාතිය හැටියට සැලකුවේ. අත්තාමත් 14ක් සුදු ජාතිකයන් 13ක් පමණ. 180ක් පමණ වූ කළු ජාතිකයන් සුදු ජාතිකයන්ගේ පාලනයට යට වෙලා හිටියේ. ඉතින් අපි ඊතරම්ම වාසනාවන්ත රාජ්‍යයක් නෙවෙයි. අපි 1948 50 ගණන් වෙන විට මේ ආසියානු කරේ තිබුණු දැවැන්ත ආර්ථිකයක් සහිත රාජ්‍යයක්. අපේ රට 1950 ගණන් වෙන විට බ්‍රිතාන්‍යයට ණය දීපු බ්‍රිතාන්‍ය අයවැය පියව ගන්න ණය දීපු රටක්. ඉතින් එහෙම රටක් අපිට අපේ ඈත අතීතයේ අපේ ආර්ථිකයට දායකත්වය ලබා දුන්නට විශේෂයෙන්ම දෙමළ ජනතාව, මුස්ලිම් ජනතාව කිසිම බාධාවක් එතන තිබුණේ නැහැ. ඒක ජාතිවාදී හැඟීමේ ව්‍යාපාරයේ සම්මුස්තු බැලුවේ නැහැ. දෙමළ මිනිහෙක්ගේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් නිසා ඒ ව්‍යාපාරය ඇතුළට අපි යන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. ඒ ව්‍යාපාරෙන් බඩු ගන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. මුස්ලිම් මිනිසුන්ගේ ව්‍යාපාරය ඇතුළට අපි යන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. එතනින් අපි බඩු ගන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ කියන සංකල්පයක් ඒවකට තිබුණේ නැහැ. ඉතින් වර්තමාන වෙනුවට අපිට තියෙනවා මේ කාරණාව කොහොමද අපි විසඳගන්නේ කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ. ඉතින් මම හිතන්නේ අපිට අපේ තරුණයන් හැටියට විශේෂයෙන්ම අපේ අතීතය අධ්‍යයනය කිරීම අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා ශ්‍රී ලංකාව තුළ. මේ සමාජයේ බෙදිලා තිබෙන්නේ මේ සමාජයත් එක්ක ගනුදෙනුවක් නැති ප්‍රශ්නයක් තිබෙනවා. සිංහල තරුණයන්, මුස්ලිම් තරුණයන් සහ දෙමළ තරුණයන් අතර ගනුදෙනුව ඉතාමත් සීමිතයි. අපි දැක්කා අපි මෑතක අපි දකුණේ කණ්ඩායමක් විශේෂයෙන් තරුණ කණ්ඩායමක් අපි අරගෙන ගියා උතුරට. ඒ උතුරේ තරුණයන් එක්ක අපි ඔවුන්ට එකට එකතු වෙලා වැඩ කරන්න අපි අවස්ථාව ලබා දුන්නා. අපි එතන වොලිබෝල් මැච් එකක් කරා. ඒ වොලිබෝල් මැච් එකේ තිබුණු සුවිශේෂීභාවය තමයි අපි ඔවුන්ට බෙදෙන්න දුන්නේ නැහැ. උතුරේ තරුණයන් සහ දකුණේ තරුණයන් වෙනම බෝල් ගැව්වේ නැහැ. ඔවුන් මිශ්‍ර කරා. මිශ්‍ර කරලා ඒ අභියෝගයට මුහුණ දෙන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා උන්ට පෙන්නුවා. ඉතින් මේ වගේ ඩයලොග් එකක්, යූත් ඩයලොග් එකක් අවශ්‍යයි මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ අවම කරගන්න. අනිත් එක තරුණයන්ට මේ අවබෝධය ලබා ගන්න. අපි දන්නවා තරුණයන් කියලා කියන්නේ මේ රටේ සංවර්ධනයට දායක වෙන්න පුළුවන් විශාල ප්‍රබල බලකායක්. ඒකම තරුණයන්ගේ හිතේ තරම් නරක වෙච්ච සිත් නැහැ. නමුත් ඔවුන්ට තියෙන ප්‍රශ්නය තමයි මේ ප්‍රධාන සෝස් එකෙන් එන තොරතුරු, ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවෙන් ගලාගෙන එන තොරතුරු අන්ත ජාතිවාදී විදියටයි ගලාගෙන එන්නේ. අන්ත ආගම්වාදී විදියටයි ගලාගෙන එන්නේ. කොහොමද අපි ඒක අඩු කරන්නේ? එහෙනම් කොහොමද අපි මේ තරුණ ප්‍රජාව දැන්වත් කරන්නේ? විශේෂයෙන් අපිට කියන්න තිබෙන්නේ අපේ දිස්ත්‍රික්කාන්තර ආගමික කමිටු වල ආගමික නායකයන්ගේ මැදිහත් වීම වලින් විසඳා ගන්න ගොඩාක් ප්‍රශ්න තිබෙනවා. උදාහරණයකට මට කියන්න පුළුවන් අම්පාර දිස්ත්‍රික්කාන්තර ආගමික කමිටුව. අම්පාරේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තිබුණා. පසුගිය රජයට කලින් රජේ දැයට කිරුළ උත්සව පැවැත්වුවා රට පුරා. ඒ උත්සවයේ අවස්ථාවන් වලදී එක භූමියක් අත්පත් කරගත්තා ඒ දැයට කිරුළ උත්සවයට එන වාහන නවත්තන්න වීකල් යාඩ් එක හැටියට. පසුව ඒක හමුදාව පාවිච්චි කරා. ඒවා මිනිස්සු වගා කරපු ඉඩම්, මේ රටේ ආර්ථිකයට දායකත්වය ලබා දීපු ඉඩම්, කෘෂිකාර්මික ඉඩම්. දැන් මේ ඉඩම් නැවත මේ වගාකරුවන්ට ලබා දෙන්න කොහොමද කියන කාරණාව දිස්ත්‍රික්කාන්තර ආගමික කමිටුවේ සාකච්ඡා වුණා. ඉන්පස්සේ වුන් හාමුදුරුවෝ, මෞලවීවරු, ෆාදර්ස්ලා, හින්දු කුරුක්කල්ලා මේ හැම කෙනෙක් මේකට එකතු වෙලා ඔවුන් දිසාපති හම්බ වුණා, ලෑන්ඩ් රෙජිස්ටර් හම්බ වුණා, ප්‍රදේශයේ ඉන්න OIC හම්බ වුණා, හමුදාවේ ඉන්න නිලධාරීන් හම්බ වුණා. මේක දීර්ඝකාලීන සාකච්ඡාවක්, දීර්ඝකාලීන වැඩක්. අවසන් ප්‍රතිඵලය උනේ මේ ඉඩම් ටික නිදහස් කරගෙන නැවත වගා කරන ඒ පුද්ගලයන්ට ලබා දෙන්න පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. ඉතින් මේකෙන් පේන්නේ මේ රටේ ආර්ථිකයට මේ දායක වෙන අයගේ ප්‍රශ්න උනත් මේ වගේ ආගමික නායකයින්ගේ මැදිහත් වීමෙන් විසඳන්න පුළුවන් කියන අදහස තමයි මට තිබෙන්නේ. අනිත් කාරණාව තමයි රජයක් විසින් මේ ප්‍රශ්න විසඳනකොට අපි දකිනවා සමහර අවස්ථාවලදී යම් කිසි ආකාරයක පාක්ෂික ස්වභාවයක් ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඔවුන්ගේ පාක්ෂිකයන් ගැන හිතන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් මේ ආගමික ප්‍රජාව මේ ස්වාධීන නිදහස් කණ්ඩායමක් ඔවුන්ට තමන්ට කියලා පාක්ෂිකයෝ නැහැ. හැබැයි තමන්ට කියලා ෆලෝවර්ස්ලා ඉන්නවා. හැබැයි මේ කොම්බිනේෂන් එකේ මේ අය අතර තියෙන මේ බැඳීමෙන් අර ෆලෝවර්ස්ලාගේ තියෙන අන්තවාදී අදහස් වලට ඉඩ ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඔව්. සැබෑ ආගමික විනාඩියක් දෙන්න. සැබෑ අයගේ හඬක් මෙතන ඇතුල් කරන්න පුළුවන්. බොහොම ස්තුතියි යාමිනී.
Thank you, Mr. Saman. Because we are fine on time, so sorry if I'm cutting you all short. Over to you, Suchit. The next question: what is the role of youth in bridging the divide between religious and cultural communities? If youth, in particular, have used innovative ways in doing so, if you can highlight one of the examples so that our participants will be able to also learn from.
Thank you, Yamini. I believe that most of the participants who would join a webinar like this are somewhere more moderate people who are more moderate people and might not be so isolated from the other communities, might have relationships and friends from the other communities. So my call is for you to be more active and more agents in your communities, in the spaces that you walk into. I think we have so many spaces that are excluding each other, isolated. If you go to, I come from a nationally recognized Sinhala Buddhist school. I grew up 13 years in that school. My home community, the lane I lived in Gampaha, is exclusively Sinhalese. So my background was that. But now I worked across the divides in this country and build relationships, have friendships, trust, and that helps me to transcend these divides. I think as young people, you need to, first of all, work on two aspects. One is your relationships with other communities. How do you transform and build positive relationships with the different communities so that you can be an agent of change? The second is your religious literacy, religious and cultural literacy. If we really want to transform our religions and cultures, we need to know what we are talking about. Otherwise, we'll be undermined and our voices will be always sidelined. So we need to really know what we are talking about. So, and that literacy will help go a long way. But then you also need to be very tactful in how you approach transformations. You can't be walking in and demanding, protesting change in these places most of the time. I want to highlight a unique practice. I call this reverse mentoring. We know of mentoring when we ask somebody experienced to guide us and support us. My practice of working with religious leaders has been on reverse mentoring. I approach religious leaders, I work with them, I ask them to advise me, guide me, but in that process, I ask them the difficult questions. I challenge them to work with the other community, not by protesting against them, but by asking them advice. How do we handle this issue? How do we talk about this? What is our response to this challenge? So I think we need to also take a proactive role. Religious leaders tend to be sometimes seen as untouchable and they're up there and we are down here. I don't think so. They are part of the structures we have. Sometimes they are also suffering in that places because they can't change things as they want as well. And sometimes you accompanying them in that process is a lot of strength to them. And that's where I also say, sometimes they can't themselves open up the place of worship for other communities. Even if they are okay to the religious leader, there's resistance from others. But when we as an outside group of young people of different religions approach the religious leader and we make the request, the religious leader then has an easier task at it. And they can open up because there was a request that came from young people from different backgrounds. And yes, we want to welcome you. So working with religious leaders in different approaches, I think is what has worked for me. I also think we need to also make connection between these isolated spaces. If you are part of a church group, if you're part of a Sunday school, a Buddhist Sunday school, a Christian Sunday school, Quranic school, we need to make sure that those spaces are connected to other youth spaces of the other religions. So I think we need to have our seminaries connected to Dhampasas, to the Pirivenas, to the Islamic religious schools. We need to make those connections and we don't need to leave other people to do it. We can facilitate that connection as young people, either through cultural events or dialogues, through sports events, whatever form, whatever is accepted by the group initially. But I think then the step we really need to make sure is we talk about the difficult things. We don't talk about just the celebration and the things that are, which is important. That's where you need to start. But then you need to go beyond that and talk about the challenges within our community, but also as a nation. What are some of the things that challenge us? So how do we transform them? Get into that difficult conversation, guiding. I think that's what I would invite these young people who are, I would say you're peace builders already if you are joining this webinar. So you need to take leadership in that process, because there's nobody else who is going to create that for us.
Thank you, Sujit. Thank you so much about how youth can take a role and how you can step up to bring about that change. And that is so important that you know that you have the power to bring about the change. So over to Rimaza, the last question for our panelist. Rimaza, religion and culture are often seen as some of the main barriers to gender parity, right? So in contexts like ours, issues of religion, culture, and gender are dismissed as being too complicated to address. With reference to Sri Lanka, in your opinion, can religion and culture contribute in a positive way to promote gender equality and inclusion? And let me just remind you, in the poll, how for everything we got majority, they agreed, but only when it came to the gender inclusion and gender equality and the role that religion and culture plays, there was only 53% or so who agreed, but majority who also disagreed. So over to you, Rimaza.
Yeah, so we proudly speak about that we have a history of 2,500 years ago, and yes, we still we are having proud history, but now.
Rimaza, sorry, we can't hear you clearly. Rimaza, sorry, we can't hear you clearly. If you can speak more into the mic. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Now you hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, but it's slightly faint, Rimaza. If you can speak a bit louder.
Normally we speak about when we are having proud history. So proudly we speak about a history that we have for 2,500 years, but we are not ready to change. Hope you could.
We can hear you, Rimaza.
Hear me.
Yes, we can. Yes.
So yeah. So the problem is mainly with our attitudes, and there are many barriers when we see. For just I could give you an example. Not just once when I visited this indigenous community, and once I was with one of my male friends, and we just want to take some water, and there was a pot, and I told my friend, okay, you could carry the pot and take the water. So then one person from the indigenous, because a male should not carry a pot. So the attitude, the culture itself was saying, then
I think Rimaza is having some internet difficulties. So
I'm sorry, I think because of the heavy rain.
Yes, Rimaza. Now we can hear you again.
Yeah,
you have around 1.5 minutes. So
because I think there's a heavy rain because of that. Okay, and so I think that I was just explaining an example from the indigenous community. Even they were just thinking that a female should carry the pot. Then I should buy a female. Then that is the structure they are brought up. So I think this religion or culture should not be a barrier for a person to think that just put barriers in education or when you are selecting a job. And also there's a good example when sex education was brought up, they were planning to bring sex education to the school syllabus. Mainly, or most of the religious leaders were against of that. So I hope you could hear me.
Yes, yes, Rimasa, we can hear you.
So I think this religion can play a role in helping us to guide us in our psychological. Here we can see in the modern that the main challenges, that means it focuses in making us that mainly focusing on education and what you should do and what you cannot do. And also I just want to say that if religion it could positively help us to stop this a person being violent, and to help a person to become calm. For examples, we could see that recently even we saw many people committing suicides. So in that way, that we can see through social media how these things are promoted. Okay. And also religion can teach us empathy. So by teaching these things, and also I can see that okay.
Okay, so thank you, Rimaza. We have 5 minutes more or so. So if there are any pressing questions, there was a very rich discussion coming from the participants. Do you all have any questions? If it is a question posing to a particular panelist, just type away and give the name of the panelist, and we'll be just happy to take your questions. Okay, so we don't have any questions coming in right now. So maybe because I would like to, even as Rimaza spoke a lot about gender and religion and culture, if one of the male participants on the panel, if one of you can comment on it and how you think religion and culture can play a role. Suchit or Dr. Vinya, one of you, would you be open to maybe giving a little bit of clarity there?
Yeah, I can start. And I think I really loved how Rimaza spoke about gender issues in the first round when she spoke about the challenges that men face in accepting gender equality, because we've been brought up in certain ways and we've been deprived of certain experiences. And that means that gender equality is not about only women. I think that we have given this notion whenever gender comes up, we have to focus on the women. I think that's not the case. Gender means it's the whole spectrum of genders. And that means that we need to understand that the male experience of gender in our upbringing is not sufficient. It's not a positive experience. It's a violent experience, in suppressive experience that they've gone through. And that's often comes out in the domestic violence, to the cultural violence, the hate speech, and everything, or the gendered violence that comes out later on. So we need to address those root causes of young people, whether they are male or female, or those who are in the spectrum of genders. And I think that when we want to transform religious and cultural rights and everything, gender is a very good place to focus on, because it challenges many of the stereotypes and many of the violence structures that we've built. For example, there's a discourse going on about the national ID cards for the bhikkhuni, the Buddhist female nuns, which is not being given in this country. When we try to change that, we'll change the Buddhist culture to be more open and inclusive. When we are reforming the MMDA and addressing the divorce discrimination against Muslim women, we are changing things. When women were allowed to walk into the Hindu Kovil in Sabrimala in India, that change brought a lot of different things. So similarly, I think when we focus on gendered issues, we can change the larger picture in a big way as well. It's not about helping the women or women equality. I think it's a larger transformation, and gender becomes a key for this transformation. And I think we need to be inclusive even to those who are transsexual or in other sexual orientations. We need to have discourses in our religious communities. We maybe haven't thought about it, but how do we welcome a trans person into our religious place? Will they be accepted? As young people lead these conversations, and that's where I think the larger transformation in a society to make our society more equal can take place.
Thank you, Suchit. Thank you. And Dr. Vinya and Saman, we just have 1 more minute, but I would love to hear your closing remarks on how can youth, who are such an important stakeholder in all this work, how can they play a role?
Saman, will you speak first? Saman ඉස්සලා කතා කරනවද නැත්නම් මම කතා කරන්න?
Doctor, I think you can start, then I will
Okay.
talk.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Yamini, and thank you, Saman. I think the youth of present generation, the so-called millennials, I am a little bit I am also trying to understand the dynamics. As Suchit said earlier, I think some of the youth, or not Suchit, I think probably another speaker, Rizana, the youth are also being influenced by extreme forms of, hate speech, and sometimes these youth are also very much polarized. So I think, but at the same time, you see an openness, a better openness than adults who could, who are not very open to having other engagement with other religious and ethnic communities. So we should find ways in which it becomes interesting and convincing for them that there is a benefit to themselves as well as to the society of having that kind of interaction through religious and ethnic harmony. And I think the dialogue is very important. And there is also, although the youth seem to be avoiding religion and want to be more secular in the sense of their careers and all that, but I also see more and more, because of what's happening, even COVID-19 is a good example, where people are turning into more nature based interactions, and also traditional ways of living and things like that. So I think we need to, particularly the adults who are working with the youth, need to create spaces for the youth to enjoy themselves in these kinds of environment and provide those opportunities. I think in that, if you do that, then you develop a new leadership of youth who are willing to engage and promote peace and harmony.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay. And Saman, quickly, we just have 1 more minute. If you can just, give a closing remark on what can youth do?
Yeah. මම හිතනවා දැන් විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ අපේ රටේ දැන් සමාජ මාධ්‍ය භාවිතයේදී තරුණයන් ඉතාමත් ඉදිරියෙන් ඉන්න කණ්ඩායමක්. ඉතින් තරුණයන්ට මේ සමාජ මාධ්‍ය හරහා රටට යම්කිසි ධනාත්මක පණිවිඩ බෙදා හරින්න පුළුවන්. විශේෂයෙන්ම තරුණයන්ගේ අර අපි දකිනවා ඒ තියෙන ආවේගය රටේ සංවර්ධනයට යොදන්න පුළුවන් නම්, රටේ ජාතික සංහිඳියාව ගොඩනගන්න යොදා ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඒක විශාල වැදගත්කමක් තිබෙනවා කියන එක තමයි අපි විශ්වාස කරන්නේ. අපි දකිනවා එක්සැම්පල් කීපයක්, මිනුවන්ගොඩ සිදුවීම, එකම දිගන සිදුවීම, මේ හැම සිදුවීමකදීම අන්තවාදය වෙනුවෙන් කටයුතු කරේ තරුණ ප්‍රජාව. ඉතින් ඒ වගේම මේ තරුණ ප්‍රජාවට පුළුවන් නම් ඒ අන්තවාදයට යම්කිසි පිළිතුරක් ලබා දෙන්න ක්‍රියා කරන්න සමාජ මාධ්‍ය භාවිතා කරලා. ඒකට යම්කිසි හොඳ ප්‍රවණතාවයක් ඇති තමයි මම දකින්නේ. විශේෂයෙන් මිනුවන්ගොඩ සිදුවීම දිහා බලනකොට මිනුවන්ගොඩ සිදුවීමේ මූලික වුණේ යම්කිසි ප්‍රතිපෝෂණයක් ලබා දුන්නා සමාජ මාධ්‍ය මේ අපි දැක්කා Facebook කරා යම්කිසි ඩයලොග් එකක් නිර්මාණය වෙනවා මුස්ලිම් තරුණයෙක් සහ සිංහල තරුණයෙක් අතර. මේක සමාජගත වුණා මේ Facebook මේ පෝස්ට් එක. ඒ පෝස්ට් එක සමාජගත වෙනකොට ඒකට කමෙන්ට්ස් කරන්න පටන් ගත්තා දෙපැත්තම කට්ටිය. අති බහුතරයක් සිංහල අය. ඉතින් මේ වගේ මේ යම්කිසි ගැටුමක් නිර්මාණය වෙන අවස්ථාවකදී මේ අන්තවාදී කණ්ඩායම් වල අයහපත් ප්‍රතිචාර සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ඔස්සේ ගමන් කිරීම හරහා අයහපත් පණිවිඩයක් මුළු රට පුරාම ගමන් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් තරුණයන්ට පුළුවන් නම් ඔවුන්ට සමාජ මාධ්‍ය භාවිතයේ තුලින් යම්කිසි ධනාත්මක ප්‍රතිචාරයන් රට තුළ ප්‍රචාරණය කරන්න යම්කිසි ආකාරයක මේ ගැටුම් පාලනය කරගන්න පුළුවන් තත්ත්වයක් තිබෙනවා. ඒකම තරුණයන්ගේ එකට එකතු වෙලා වැඩ කරන ස්වභාවය දියුණු කරගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ගම්වල වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නගර වෙන්න පුළුවන්, ඒකම විවිධ ප්‍රදේශ අන්තර් ප්‍රදේශ වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මේ හැමතැනදීම අපිට පුළුවන් නම් අපේ ફોකස් එක වෙනස් කරන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ සිංහල පමණක් නෙවෙයි සිංහල දෙමළ මුස්ලිම් කියන concept එක ඇතුළේ අපිට වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් මම හිතන්නේ ප්‍රශ්න ගොඩක් අපිට විසඳ ගන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක තමයි මගේ විශ්වාසය. ඒ වගේ එවැනි අත්දැකීම් බොහෝ තිබෙනවා.
Thank you.
ඒක රටට වැදගත් වෙයි කියලා please.
Thank you, Saman.
Thank you.
And thank you. So we will end this discussion, and thank you to all the participants. Just few things to quickly wrap up how Dr. Vinya spoke about looking inwards and intra, and how a lot of these concepts that we may think even sustainable development goals are Western concepts, they are in fact not. It is coming from your own beliefs, your rich culture. And these are things that we have a responsibility. And as Rimaza spoke about the gender parity and inequality, and how religion and culture, even as youth, we can do something. You can do something to bring about. And Sujit spoke and some about some of the examples, the important role that youth play, and even reverse mentoring. And someone spoke about how in peace, so many instances, not only religious leaders, but youth can also really come together. So on that note, I think it is not a Western concept. It is within your own culture. And from what I understand, you as youth leaders, as people who are interested in this area, have the power to make the change and to move towards as one nation, considering all these things for us to live in peace and harmony and to build a better Sri Lanka. So on that note, I will end this discussion and thanking the panelists and the UNDP for a very fruitful discussion. And thank you for having all of us here. Over to you, UNDP. Thank you.